Hello, hello, hello. Okay, hello everyone. Good morning. Good evening. Okay, okay. Let's review yesterday's paragraph. Continent, Illinois. Oh, continent, Illinois. Okay. The gaudy fabric began to unravel. Preserve, perceive, 记不住，根本记不住这个 perceive 记不住，还有一个 perspect 记不住，perspect 不对吗？没有这个词吗？prospect prospect pre prospect perceive perceive 记不住，没事记不住，hit up 像什么锁起。the gaudy the gaudy fabric began to unravel in on the action 就是激进赌博。In the fantasy land of modern fantasy, glitter is often more important than substance. Image more valuable than reality. Wow, we should remember this sentence. Really a good sentence. Okay. Okay, let's continue. Today's section. World's first electronic bank run. As the as the the sun as the sun rose the following morning, foreign investors began to withdraw their deposits. $1 billion in Asian money moved out that first day. The next day, a little more than 24 hours following Continental assurance that bankruptcy was totally preposterous, preposterous, 荒谬的. Its long-standing customer, the Board of Trade Clearing Corporate, located just down the street, withdraw 50 million. Wow. Word of the defection. Word of the defection. 背叛 defection spread through the financial wire services, and the panic was on. Wow. And it became the world's first global electronic bank run. Oh. Electronic bank run. By Friday, the bank had been forced to borrow, wow, 3.6 billion from the Federal Reserve in order to cover its escaping deposits. A consultant 财团 consultant 哇，这个记住来 consultant of 16 banks led by Morgan Guaranty offered a generous 30-day line of credit. But all of this was far short of the needs. Oh my god. With 7 more days, the outflow surged to over 6 billion. Whoa, 6 billion. So 3.6. 3 billion. Oh my god. Only 7 days. In the beginning, almost all of this action was at the institutional level. Other banks and professionally managed funds, which closely monitor every minuscule detail of the financial markets. 非常小的 minuscule. In the beginning, almost all of this action was at the institutional level. Institutional level. 是机构间的，最开始只是机构间的。Other banks and professionally managed funds, which closely monitor every minute details of the markets. 这是。The general public had no inkling of the catastrophe even as it unfolded. Chernow says, the continent's run was like some modernistic fantasy. There were no throngs of hysterical depositors, just cool nightmare flashes on computer screen. 没有吃到见红，就是网络有个噩梦，只是很酷的噩梦在电脑屏幕闪烁。Throngs of hysterical deposits. Hysterical 成群结队的，歇斯底里的，只是歇斯底里的狂乱的 hysterical throngs
Throng.
Throng of hysterical depositors just cool nightmare flashes on the computer screen. Sprague read, inside the bank, all was calm. The teller lines moved as always, and bank officials recall no visible sign of trouble except in the wire room. Here, the employees knew what was happening as withdrawal order after order moved on the wide, bleeding continent to death. Some cried. This was the golden moment for which the Federal Reserve and the FDIC were created. Golden moment. Without government intervention, without government intervention, 政府干预 government intervention， 我的干预、干涉、介入。Okay, the actual process of intervening, interferences, interference by a country in another's affair. Action taken to improve a situation, especially a medical disorder. An occasion on which a person with an addiction or other behavioral problem is confronted by a group of friends or family members in an attempt to persuade them to address the issue. Persuade 是游说。Continental would have collapsed, its stockholders would have been wiped out, the depositors would have been badly damaged, and the financial world would have learned that banks not only have to talk about prudent management, they actually have not adopted future banking practices would have been severely altered, and the long-term economic benefit to the nation would have been enormous. Oh my God! But with government intervention, the decline of a free market is suspended, and the cost of failure or fraud is particularly passed to the taxpayers, depositors, depositors continue to live in a dream world of false security, and banks can operate recklessly and fraudulently with the knowledge that their political partners in government will come to their rescue, and when they get into trouble, oh my goodness, suspended. Suspend. Ah, ah, ah. But with government in intervention, with government intervention，这个记一下，government 对吗？govern govern government intervention 是和那个这和哪个单词来着？A family attempt to persuade the actual interferences 交涉 interference okay interference interference. Okay, the next example, FDIC generosity with tax dollars. FDIC generosity 对纳税资金的慷慨啊 generosity with taxpayer. One of the challenges at Continental was that, while only 4% of its liability was covered by FDIC, 4% insurance, the regulators felt compelled to cover the entire employer. The regulators felt compelled force or oblige someone to do something, bring about something by the use of force or prayer. 可能就是drive forcibly. The regulators 督导机构 regulators. The regulators felt compelled to cover the entire 他们也知道他们被迫的 cover the entire employer, which means that the bank paid insurance premiums into the fund based on only 4% of its total coverage, and the taxpayers now would pick up the other 96%. FDIC Director Speckler explains, 他还要 explain 一下 although Continental Illinois had over 30 billion in deposits, 90% were uninsured. Foreign deposits or large certificates substantially exceed the insurance limits. Substantially 客观的 substant 重要的大部分的 substantially or larger certificates substantially exceed 数量可观的这样的单词，这是 exceed the 100 insurance limits of book liabilities swelled 狼吞虎咽 swelled 达到 in its real size of 2 oh my god 69 billion. In this massive liability structure, only some 3 billion within the insured limit was scattered around 大概随处放置散落 scattered among deposit accounts. So it was in our power and entirely legal simply to pay off the insured deposits, let everything else collapse, and stand back to watch the carnage. Carnegie, 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 Carnegie. So it was our power to. So it is in our power and entirely legal, simply to pay off the insurance deposits, let everything else, and stand back to watch the Carnegie, 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 Car, call, Carnegie, 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 Carnegie,
Carnage.
Carnegie, Carnegie,
Carnage.
Carnegie, 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 Carnegie。因此，我们完全有权利且合法的仅支付生活的，任由其他一切本塔，然后退而观看这场灾难。So it was in our power and entirely legal, simply to pay off the insured depositors, 最张大一点 depositors, let everything else collapse and stand back to watch the Carnegie.
So it was in our power and entirely legal simply to pay off the insured depositors, let everything else collapse, and stand back to watch the carnage.
That course was never seriously considered by any of the players. From the beginning, there were only two questions: how to come to Continental's rescue by covering its total liabilities, and, equally important, how to politically justify such a fleecing, such a fleecing, 哦 fleecing of the taxpayer, such a fleecing justify such a fleecing， 这也是薅羊毛，他们也老美也叫薅羊毛 fleecing of the taxpayer. As pointed out in the previous chapter, the rules of the game require that the scam must always be described as a heroic effort, heroic, heroic, 英勇 heroic, hero, heroic, heroic effort to protect the public. In the case of Continental, can continental. The sheer size of the number, the sheer 十足的、纯属意外的、陡峭的、轻薄的、突兀的 the sheer size of the numbers 陡峭的数字 may the ploy strategy relatively easy 这吓人的数字 让这个策略变得 relatively easy. There were so many depositors involved, so many billions at risk, so many other banks interlocked, and it could be claimed that the economic fabric of the entire nation, of the world itself, was at stake. 摇摇欲坠 stake. stake. 哦 stake 是什么？一张标注监视，赌注，标装，赌注 was at stake. It could claim that the economic fabric of entire nation was at stake. was at stake 啊，都在赌桌上，是吧 stake. And who could say that it was not so? Square argues the case in family terms, in familiar terms. What's at stake? Was at stake. 岌岌可危 could be claimed the economic fabric of the entire nation. Entire nation was at stake. At stake 处于危险之中，风险之中。At stake. At stake. At stake. At stake. At stake. And who could say that? Square argues the case in familiar terms as an earlier morning meeting was scheduled for Tuesday. We talked over Tuesday, May 15 at the Fed. We talked over the alternatives. They were few, non-really. Treasury Secretary. 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 Okay, secretary. Reagan and Fed Chairman Walker raised the familiar concern about national banking collapse. That is a chain reaction if continental should fail. Walker was worried about an international crisis. Crisis. Okay, crisis. We were all acutely aware that never before had a bank even remotely approaching continental sites closed. No one knew what might happen in the nation and in the world. It was no time to find out just for the purpose of intellectual curiosity. Intellectual curiosity. It was no time 找不到更那个什么的 curiosity 更有智慧的 there was no time to find out just for the purpose of the intellectual curiosity 啊满足好奇心 no time to just find out just for the purpose of intellectual curiosity 探索知识的兴趣 intellectual curiosity intellectual 激发智力好奇探索好奇知识好奇心天哪，这可以了，打发了。It was no time to find out just the purpose of intellectual curiosity. The final bailout package， 哇，这个 package 有多大啊 ？The bailout was predictable， 可以预测的 ，predictable from start. There would be some preliminary lip service given to the necessity of allowing the banks themselves to work out their own problem. Preliminary lip service given to that would be followed by a plan to have the banks and the government share the burden. And that finally would collapse into a mere public relations illusion. In the end, almost the entire cost of the bailout would be assumed by the government and passed on to the taxpayer. The bailout was predicted from the start. There would be some preliminary lip service given to the necessity of allowing the banks themselves to work out their own problem. That would be followed by a plan to have the banks and the government share the burden. 天，这是象征性的那个什么？这是演戏的部分是吧 ？Preliminary 先敷衍，提及需要必要性啊。Preliminary lip service 敷衍提 lip service 关键词啊，嘴唇的 service。preliminary 表现 preliminary 天 lip service is a lip service. That would be followed by a plan to have the banks and the government share the burden. And that funnel would collapse into a mere public relation and almost the entire cost of at the May 15 meeting, Treasury Secretary Reagan spoken eloquently, 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 雄辩哦 in a fluent or prayer manner. Prayer about the value of the free market and the necessity, necessary, necessity, 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 necessity of having the banks mount their own rescue plan, at least for part of the money. To work out that plan, a summit meeting was arranged the next morning among the chairman of the 7 largest banks, Morgan, Grant, Garrett, Guarantee, Morgan Guarantee, Chase Manhattan, Guarantee, Again Guarantee, Chase Manhattan, Citibank of America, Citibank, Bank of the America, Chemical Bank, Bankers Trust, and Manufacturers Hanover. The meeting was perfection at best. 哇，表现极度良好。敷衍 perfunctory, perfunctory,我天 lip service, perfunctory, 哈哈 at best, 极其的敷衍。The bankers knew full well that the Reagan administration would not risk the political embarrassment of a major bank failure. That would make the president and the Congress look bad at election time. But still, some kind of tokenism was called for to preserve 保护 preserve the administration's conservative image. Tokenism 表面文章 tokenism. It has been accused of tokenism, a police of tokenism. 天哪 tokenism 天哪 But still, some kind of tokenism was called for to preserve the administration's conservative image. So, with urgency from the Fed and the Treasury, the consortium agreed to put up the sum of $500 million, an average of only $71 million for each. Far short of the actual need. Chernow describes the plan as make-believe and says they pretended to mount a rescue. Branger supplied the details. The bankers said they wanted to be in on any deal. But any deal, but they did not want to lose any money. They kept asking for guarantees. They kept asking for guarantees. They wanted it to look as though they were putting money in, but at the same time wanted to be absolutely sure they were not risking anything. By 7:30 a.m., we had made little progress. We were certain the situation would be totally out of control in a few hours. Continental would soon be exposing itself to a new business day, and the stock market would open at 10 o'clock. Isaac, another FDIC director, and I held a hallway conversation. Another term of hall since one of now. Hall 走廊门厅礼堂 hallway conversation hallway conversation 走廊谈什么叫走廊a hallway conversation what does it mean a hallway conversation 走廊里的对话 We agreed to go ahead without the banks. Oh, we told Knower, the third director, the plan, and he concurred. Agree. Happened occurred at the same time. Later, we got word from Bernie McCain, our regional director in New York, that the bankers had agreed to be at risk. Actually, the risk was remote since our announcement had promised 100% insurance. The final bailout package was a Hopper 硕大的 Hopper 账单惊人 Hopper Basically, the government took over conditional illusions and assumed all of its losses. Oh my god, the government. Especially the FDIC took 4.5 billion in bad loans and paid Canadians 5.5 billion for them. FDIC 吃了4.5的坏账，然后付了3.5 billion. The differences was then made up by the infusion of 1 billion in fresh capital in the form of stock purchase. The bank, therefore, now had a federal government as a stockholder controlling 8% or 80% of its shares, and its bad loans had been dumped onto the temperature. Dumped. Dump. 转成哦， special FDIC took and paid. The differences was then made up by the investment fresh capital in the form of stock purchase. 啥意思？联邦存款接手了 took and paid， 并向大陆银行支付了3.5亿购买这些存款。The differences was made up. The difference was then made up. 剩下的差额the difference was then made up by the inflation of 通过新资本 in the form of stock purchase， 以保险的形式。这个账怎么做的啊？他接了45亿的不良贷款，然后支付了是35亿，剩下这个10亿呢，通过注入10亿美元的新资本差额以购买股票的形式弥补。我再买你10亿美金的股票，是这个意思吗？购买股票的形式注入新资本。剩下的10亿通过股票的方式给你注入进去。Okay. The difference was then made up by the inclusion形象里表示 inclusion 灌入炮制注入 fresh capital in the form of stack in the fresh capital 新的资金投入。 OK， in effect even though continent retained the appearance of private institution, it had been nationalized. 虽然仍然是私人机构，但其实已经国家化了，因为国家给了那么多钱，相当于国家把它买了。Oh my god. Lender of last resort. 最后借款人，最后一招。Lender of last resort. Perhaps. 最终借款人，是吗？最终借款人，最后贷款人。Perhaps the most important of the bailout, however, was that the money to make it possible was created directly or indirectly by the Federal Reserve System. If the bank had been allowed to fail and the FDIC had been required to cover the losses, the drain shut it down. There we go. Money drain. The drain would have emptied the entire fund with nothing left to cover the liability of thousands of other banks. In other words, this one failure alone, if it were allowed to happen, would have wiped out the entire FDIC. That's one reason the bank had to be kept operating, losses or no losses, and that's why the Fed had to be involved in the bailout. In fact, that was precisely the reason the system was created at JEKYLL to manufacture whatever amount of money might be necessary to cover the losses of the cartel. The scam would never work unless the Fed was able to create money out of nothing and pump it into the banks along with credit and liquidity guarantees. The Fed was able to create money out of nothing and pump it into the banks along with credit and liquidity guarantees, which means if the loans go sour, the money is eventually extracted from the American people through the hidden tax called inflation. That's the meaning of the phrase "lender of the last resort." OK， 这个解释太棒了。That's the meaning of the Fed. 这个解释好，这个解释非常的棒。That's the meaning of the phrase "lender of the last resort." OK, which means if the loan goes sour, the money is eventually extracted from the American people through the hidden tax code. Extracted. The loan goes sour. 变酸了。The loan goes sour. 贷款变坏账。Go sour 是西语，变酸。FDIC Director Irwin Sprinkle, while discussing the press release which announced the Continental bailout package, describes the Fed role this way. 看看怎么狡辩啊。The third paragraph, guaranteed 100% insurance to all depositors, including the uninsured and all general creditors. The next paragraph set forth the conditions under which the Fed, as lender of the last resort, would make its loans. The Fed would lend to Continental to meet any extraordinary liquidity requirements. 非同寻常的流动性需求 that would include another round. All agreed that Continental could not be saved without 100% insurance by FDIC and unlimited liquidity support by the Federal Reserve. No plan would work without these two elements. By 1984, unlimited liquidity support had translated into the令人惊奇的 staggering sum of 炸舌的是吧 staggering 震惊的对吧震惊的 staggering sum of 8 billion 80 亿 by early 1986. The figure had climbed to 9.24 billion and was still rising. While explaining this fleecing of the taxpayer, fleecing of taxpayer. Fleecing of the taxpayer to the Senate Banking Committee, Fed Chairman Paul Volcker said. The operation is the most basic function of the Federal Reserve. That was why it was founded. With those words, he has confirmed one of the more controversial assertion of this book. It has one of the more controversial assertion. 这个叫 controversial assertion of this book. 它证实了本书的一个更具争议性的观点。Controversial, controversial, British, 这个是controversial, controversial, controversial. Oh my god. Okay, summary. Okay, so a long summary. So, small banks being damned. Okay, let's continue. Small banks being damned. Okay, it has been mentioned previously that the large banks receive a free ride on the FDIC coverage at the expense of a small bank. There could be no better example of this than the bailout of Continental Illinois. Receive a free ride on coverage. Free ride. ，at the expense of. 之前曾提到免费待遇 free ride 是一个习语，表示占便宜。free ride dictionary is previous perfection. Free ride at the expense of the small banks. At the expense of. Okay. I need to. Okay. English. Okay. Free ride.
Here in search of a free ride or an easy life. They came to work. Our friends, they did not come here in search of a free ride or an easy life.
奥巴马都已经耗费成这样了。
You know, Americans don't accept a free ride for anybody.
是牛逼。American 不占便宜，你最喜欢占便宜。
Learned in this work is that there's no free ride in a sense. Like if there's
Americans don't accept a free ride for anybody. Nor do we believe in equality of outcomes, but we do expect equal opportunity.
Equal opportunity.
It's not a free ride. It's very tough, but you can participate in the
anything that they're benefiting from as a free ride.
Okay, and Mr.
Okay, free ride. There could be no better example of this than the bailout of consumer users. In 1983, the bank 就是劫富，叫劫贫济富是吧？劫贫济富。The bank paid a premium into the fund of only 6 million to protect its insured deposits of 3 billion. The actual liability, however, including its institutional and overseas deposits, was 10 times that figure, and the FDIC guaranteed payments on the whole amount. As Spritz admitted, small banks pay proportionately, 相应的 proportionately far more for their insurance and have far less chance of a continued style bailout. How true? Within the same week that the FDIC and the Fed were providing billions in payments, stock purchases, loans, and guarantees for the continued Illinois. It closed down the tiny Bledsoe County Bank of Pickville, Tennessee, and the Planet 都快接近这个 Trust and the Saving Banks of Louisiana. During the first half of that year, 43 smaller banks failed. 43 without an FDIC bailout. In most cases, a merger was arranged with a large bank, and only the uninsured deposits were at risk. The impact of this inequality upon the banking system is enormous. It sends a message to the bankers and depositors alike that small banks, if they got into trouble, will be allowed to fold, whereas large banks are safe regardless of how poorly or fraudulently they are managed. As a New York investment analyst stated to news reporters, continental Illinois, even though it had just failed, was obviously the safest bank in the country to have your money in. Oh my God. Nothing could be better calculated to drive the small independent banks out of business or to force them to sell out to the giants. And that giants, and that, in fact, is exactly what has been happening since 1984, while hundreds of small banks have been forced out of business. The average size of the bank which remain with government protection has more than doubled. It will be recalled that this advantage of the big banks over their smaller competitors was also one of the objectives of the JEKYLL Island Plan, perhaps the most interesting and depressing. 有趣且印象深刻的 aspects of the continental Illinois
Continental.
注意在前面 continental Illinois bailout was the lack of public indignation over the principles of using taxes and inflation to protect the banking industry. 没有公众讨论，关注都不关注。Smaller banks have complained of their unfair advantage given to the larger banks, but not on the basis that the government should have let the giant fail. Their lament 悲痛挽歌 lament Their lament was that it should now protect them in the same paternalistic fashion. Paternalistic. I find his attitudes are a bit paternalistic, in the same paternalistic fashion.
Paternalistic fashion.
Paternalistic. Paternalistic. Fashion. Paternalistic fashion. Paternalistic fashion. Voters and politicians were silent on the issue, apparently awed by the sheer size of the numbers and the specter of economic chaos. Specter. A ghost. Specter. Ghost. 大怪兽 chaos. Decades of public education had left their mark. 看看是啥意思。在这个问题上保持沉默，显然把庞大的数字和经济混乱的幽灵所震撼。数十年的公共教育已经留下left their mark 影响深远 left their mark public education 公共领域的教育意识形态的灌输，这就是decades of public education 数十年的意识形态的灌输已经留下了深刻的记忆。After all, wasn't this exactly what government schools have taught is the proper function of government? Wasn't this the American way? Even Ronald Reagan, viewed as the national champion of the economic conservatism, 经济保守主义 praised the action From aboard Air Force One on the way to California, the president said it was a thing that we should do, and we did it. It was in the best interest of all concerned. It was in the best interest of all concerned. 这是我们应该做的事儿，而我们也确实做到，这符合所有相关方的最佳利益。It was in the best interest of all concerned. 相关方 all concerned 所有相关方，这是一个正式表达，常用于商业或政策性的场合。OK， 哇，这个 It was in the best interest of all concerned. It was in the best interest of all concerned. It was in the best interest of all concerned. It was in the best.
It was in the best interest of all concerned.
It was in the best interest.
It was in the best interest of all concerned.
It was in the
best interest of all concerned.
It was in the best interest. It was in the best interest of all concerned. It was in the best interest of all concerned. It was in the best interest of all.
It was in the best interest of all concerned.
It was in the best interest of all concerned. It was in the best interest of all concerned. Best interest of.
It was in the best interest of all concerned.
It was in the best interest of concern. It was in the best interest of all concerned. All concerned.
It was in the best interest of all concerned.
Best interest of all best interest of all concerned. Best interest of all concerned.
It was in the best interest of all concerned.
It was in the best interest of all concerned.
It was in the best interest of all concerned.
It was in the best interest of all concerned. Okay, that's all for today. My God. Oh my God. Okay. Continent. Final bailout package. Okay. Government intervention. Intervention. 政府干预。Carnegie 灾难是吧 Carnegie 灾难 at stake 灾难风险是吗 at stage at stage areas collapse 风险之中 at stage 表示处于风险之中 at stage at stake stake 是啥意思呢庄火星注赌注 high stakes put a stake on stake at stake to play for high stakes raise the stakes to be at stake 有风险 to be at stake there is a lot of at stake put something at stake 处于风险之中 lip service perfunctory lip service perfunctory 表面文章 lip service free ride 占便宜 free ride 这个有意思占 便宜。tokenism 表面文章 tokenism 表面文章是吗 ？tokenism 形式主义表面文章 OK， 这应该在这儿。tokenism freezing the taxpayer 这是好不讨厌的 free ride 啊，真便宜这个。It was in the best interest of all concerned。都是老三样，天呐，都是老三样的 final bailout package， 都是这样，一直是这样。第一个，各个银行然后认购一些债券或者提供一些钱，提供一些资金，做做样子，是吧？这就是 lip service or perfunctory tokenism， 那个这是银行做的事儿，然后政府做的事儿呢，政治家做的事儿是 tokenism， 开个会，做做表面文章，然后扯扯淡，然后呢把风险转移给民众，告诉民众，吓唬民众，哇，economic 什么什么灾难是吧 ？disaster， 然后 fleecing the， 然后 FDIC 出场，然后 government 出场，然后把钱注入，真正的大钱注入，然后 fleecing of the taxpayer， 注入这些钱之后呢，印新钱，就是印的新钱，然后注入进去之后，然后通过什么？这就是薅的羊毛，然后呢，再物价飞涨 ，flexion， 那 was the best interest of all concerned， 叫里根 Reagan，Ronald Reagan， 小银行就这块说的是什么 ？This was the meaning of the phrase lender。Which means if the loans go sour, the money is eventually extracted from the American people through the hidden tax called inflation. This is the meaning of the phrase lender of the last resort. 这就是 last resort。然后小银行就被诅咒了，小银行就该死死的。Okay, that's all for today. Thank you guys. Thank you very much. See you tomorrow. Bye bye.